As you all have probably saw, we finally got gameplay for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and I just don't want to waste any time and jump in, break down what I saw, some theories I have, everything like that. First, let me just start off by saying, opening the gameplay trailer with this shot in the jungle, I was beyond livid. I thought we weren't getting anything Spider-Man 2 related. Hell, I didn't even realize it was Spider-Man 2 stuff until this wannabe art character said Sergey.
What have I got?
Jumping right into it, I don't want to cover too much stuff that you guys have probably already seen from other people or around the internet in general, but I do want to touch on this character Wraith that we see while scrolling across the iPad that Kraven is looking at. And obviously, most of us know that that is Yuri Watanabe from the first game, and after the first game's DLCs, if you've played those, she kind of went rogue, and now she's kind of taking up this whole vigilante thing on her own. I have no idea how this is going to play into the story. My guess is that it's going to be like side content. I don't think they're going to weave it into the main story. Now, jumping on over to the actual gameplay, we open in Queens, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one that thought this was actually Peter's house, because we know from the prequel comic that Peter is now living in Aunt May's house back in Queens. But I believe Sony or Insomniac confirmed in a PlayStation blog that this is actually Dr. Connor's house in Queens. And since we know that Dr. Connors is working with Norman Osborn to try to help Harry using the symbiote in some way, also combining that info with this one line that Miles says to Peter later on in the gameplay,
Whoa. Hey, man. New threads?
we can infer that this is probably pretty early on when Peter gets the symbiote. If not, this being the very first time that Peter even puts it on. And of course, the other option is that Peter is hiding it from Miles or has been for a little bit of time, but I don't see that being a realistic possibility considering how closely they work together. My guess is Dr. Connors took some of the symbiote back to his lab at his house to try to enhance it some more to hopefully help save Harry's life. And somewhere along the way, he turns into the lizard, leaps away, and Peter's trying to track him down, goes back to his house, finds the symbiote, it ends up on him. Now, jumping into the actual symbiote suit and what I think about it, I don't quite love it, but I do like it a lot. I do love how it looks all slimy and alive, but I just don't know if I like the different kind of padded sections and everything like that. I understand why it looks like that. The symbiote has just crawled all over Peter's advanced suit, and the advanced suit definitely has more of a armored and padded look to it. What I'm thinking is going to happen, especially if this is the first time that Peter has put the symbiote on, later on as we play with Peter throughout the game through having the symbiote on, it's going to change and form and look different. Similar to the Spectacular Spider-Man TV show, if you guys have watched that, where as Peter wore the symbiote, it became bonded to him even more and changed its appearance. But anyway, looking at the actual gameplay here, and I want to focus on the HUD for a little bit. As we can see in the bottom left middle about, we can see holding L1 and pressing multiple buttons along that wheel will activate the special abilities that both Peter and Miles have. My question for this wheel, I guess, is what happens when Peter doesn't have the symbiote? What does this ability wheel look like for Peter? Is it mostly tied to, I remember back with the original teaser trailer that released for this game, Peter was going to be using the spider arms a lot, and so I'm wondering if that's how that's going to tie in when he doesn't have the symbiote on. But then if we look at the wheel on the bottom right about in the middle, you hold R1 and press multiple buttons along that wheel, that looks like the gadget wheel, and I'm thinking that they have knocked down the gadget use a little bit because there was a little bit of a overpowering sort of feel when you use all of the gadgets and you had them all at the mercy of your will kind of thing. I mean, seriously, bro, if you knew how to use those gadgets precisely and effectively in the first two games, you were pretty much unstoppable. So I really like the decision to kind of lock it down and make it only 4 usable gadgets at once. I'm sure there's going to be more to choose from. You just have to choose which 4 you want to have active at that moment when you're like flipping through the pause menu or something like that. I know everybody and their mother has already talked about it, but oh my god, Symbiote Peter is absolute perfection. Yuri Lowenthal is in his bag with voicing this.
Kraven wants a hunt? I'll give him one he'll never forget. He's gonna wish he never came to New York.
Sure, some of the lines that he says sound a little bit cringe, but imagine that like coming out of a nerdy little Peter. Like that makes so much sense. But if this is Peter with the symbiote for the first time and his attitude has already changed this much, either the symbiote just has a very strong effect on him early on in this game, or what I'm thinking is that he was already upset about a multitude of things. He just found out that Harry, his best friend, is dying. Craven, this new guy coming into the city trying to mess things up after he told him to leave Connors alone. Peter's already pissed off. This symbiote is going to latch onto that and amplify it almost immediately. I mean, look at what he did to this dude. Peter probably hit him so hard that he puked those little ping pong balls out his mouth. And obviously this part needs some praise. Switching to Miles pretty much instantly across the city. Looks like Miles is in Manhattan. That is insane. The power of the PS5 right there. But we jump into the Super Slingshot. I can't tell you how excited I was when I saw this pop up. But the fact that it says Super Slingshot tells me that we're going to have multiple different levels of the Slingshot, especially looking at how far Miles flew when he did this Super Slingshot. I'm sure there's different levels to it, almost like how in the first game you had to upgrade the web zip before you could web zip twice without losing altitude, or like how you had to upgrade the perch jump every time you web zip to a certain location. And then we see Miles go straight into the web wings. Oh my god, this is a needed feature. I wanted this so bad. My one concern is that as Miles is flying through the city with the web wings, these rings that pop up that he's flying through, obviously he's being carried by a wind current, and I believe they said in one of the blogs that to get to this speed and this momentum, you want to fly through the city skylines just like this. But I'm wondering if these rings are going to be there all the time to show you your traversal, the way you have to go in order to keep that speed, or if this is just to show you which direction to go for the mission. Me personally, I hope that they're not there all the time. It kind of seems like it's giving me like a mini side mission race vibe from it, and I don't know if I like that, just traversing through the world normally. But at the same time, I can understand how it might be hard to see like the wind that's gustling through these skyscrapers in order to keep that momentum going, so I don't know, it's up in the air for me. While we're on the topic of Miles, I want to talk about his new suit a little bit. I actually love the red lines going all the way down the arms. I love the suit in general. The one thing I don't like about it, and this is real nitpicky, so bear with me, but the gloves. Why does he have that weird red padding on top of the gloves? What's up with that? Like, just looks kind of goofy to me. I don't know. And as we're watching Miles take down this group of guys in this warehouse, pay attention to his blue bioelectricity. And also pay attention to how one of the henchmen said, watch out for his new powers. That's going to play into what I'm talking about here in a little bit. I absolutely love how when Miles is walking through this broken part of the warehouse, it's horrifying. They're trying to play it as a horrifying situation. Miles is slowly walking through. It's really eerie. I love it so much. During this chase scene, the web swinging looks a lot faster, and I'm not sure if that's just because it is a chase scene, but it looks faster than the first two games. And I wasn't really someone who had too much of a problem with the speed of the web swinging, but I could definitely see how it could be improved, and I do like what they're doing here. Also, speaking of the web swinging, we didn't really get too much of it in the city, so I don't want to touch on this topic a little like too much, but it seems like it's almost very similar, at least mechanics wise, to the first time around. And I know a lot of people had issues with that, myself included, like how you couldn't really mess up when web swinging. You could never really touch the ground. And we see little bits and pieces of that here, like when Miles is swinging over the water. It looks like he could have touched the water, but he didn't for whatever reason. Again, I don't want to touch on this too much until we see another gameplay section of them actually swinging through the city to see if they have something like, oh, they run into the ground, or you do hit something and you just have to recover based off of your own instincts kind of thing. Seeing as how, like, you know, if Miles touched the water, that would slow his momentum down a lot, and for a demo's purposes, I can see how that wouldn't be very exciting to watch for most people, so they didn't want to include that here. I can understand that. So I want to hold off on my judgments when it comes to the mechanic side of web swinging until we see another gameplay section. I want to touch on the lizard a little bit, and usually big monstrous lizard designs aren't usually my favorite. I'm more of a fan of like the classic, slightly bigger than a human, still looking like a lizard, kind of long snout design. That's what I like the most. But I feel like this is a lot more easily explainable with this being Dr. Connors' second or third time being the lizard, and it looks like he's been the lizard for a long time, at least in this demo. He's molted, he keeps eating, he's getting bigger, and they're explaining why he's getting bigger. And I'm sure we're going to see him earlier on as well and see what he looks like before he turns into this gigantic monster. So also, I'm not sure how many people caught this in the actual demo, but when both Peter and Miles fall into the river, Kraven's henchmen say,
"Over there! The one with the tendrils! Move, move, move!"
I wonder why they seemingly don't care about Miles whatsoever. I think it could be a multitude of things. I think maybe Kraven just looks at Peter as the greater equal to him in some way because of the symbiote maybe. But again, this goes back to this might be the first time Peter has had the symbiote on. Or what I'm also thinking is that maybe Kraven already took down Miles or beat the crap out of him or something, and he just doesn't see Miles as a threat anymore and therefore no longer wants to hunt him. He doesn't think he's a challenge anymore. But also in saying that, Peter was kind of like a bonus mission for Kraven's henchmen. Like, Kraven is very much chasing after the lizard here. He's not focusing on Peter. But if he can get to Peter, then yes, get Peter. But obviously Kraven sees the lizard as more of a challenge at this very moment. Also, I gotta say, I love how this guy is just fishing throughout this whole thing. He heard explosions and stuff off in the distance coming slowly closer towards him, but he's just like, nah, I gotta get this fishing in, dog. I'm about to catch me a biggin. Also, Genki screaming as the drone is flying towards the big gunship. Absolutely unnecessary. He does not need to be doing that, but I love it so much. Now, this is where we're getting into like the real meat of it all. There's little moments throughout the entire demo of Peter being kind of dismissive and being an asshole, really, to Miles.
Sounds like Kraven's checking off his...
We don't have much time. Move.
New threats?
The building's swarming with hunters.
And this is one of the moments that kind of comes to a head for me when Peter saves this guy and then just chucks him on the ground and swings back to the action. That's crazy. Even Miles is standing there and he's kind of taken aback. He's like, yo, did my mans just do that? Like, that's crazy.
Are you serious right now, bro?
And then we cut over to Peter, who lands by himself for a short amount of time, very short amount of time, and says he got away from us. And then Miles lands shortly after him. Now, granted, you could take this however you want to. Me personally, I think this is the symbiote very slowly starting to creep its way in, saying a unifying us when talking about just Peter and the symbiote. But again, you could say that he is talking about him and Miles. However you want to take it, I think is valid. But personally, when you couple that with all of Peter's actions throughout this demo, throwing the guy down, being really dismissive towards Miles, not even putting up with his banter for a little bit, I think it's more likely that he is saying the unifying us as in the symbiote. When Miles says, "Are you sure you want to go alone? He has big teeth." And then Peter says,
So do I.
and then you can see the eyes change on his suit. They change to look more like who? Venom. And that is a big theory going around. I'm not going to take credit for this one. Everybody has been talking about how Venom might end up being Peter in this game. Because realistically, what teeth would he be talking about? He might be talking about the metaphorical teeth, like Peter just punches really hard and so that's like sharp teeth to him. Or could be talking about the symbiote when it attaches itself and makes itself Venom. It has real sharp teeth. But when you couple all of Peter's actions and the eyes changing here, and then you cut back to the original announcement trailer for this game, where Kraven says,
Will one of you finally give me what I desire?
and then Venom responds,
Yes. We will.
Now for me, I'm totally thinking that Kraven is talking to both Peter and Miles. And what if he is, but Peter responds with the symbiote as Venom? Because Peter, as we can see in this demo, Peter hates Kraven. Peter probably borderline wants Kraven dead. So he is ready to give Kraven the challenge that he desires. Just now, he is completely pissed off and fully venomized. Or, you know, we're all just looking into this a little bit too much and it's just going to end up being Harry. I don't know. But where's the fun in that? Let's be honest. Now we get to the end of the trailer where we see the Spider-Man logo, the white spider, getting engulfed in symbiote goo. And then right as it dissipates, it looks like we see a shock of blue bioelectricity. And that does not happen just once, it happens twice. The second time being when the tagline of the game pops up saying "Be greater together." The word "together" is engulfed in symbiote goo, and then the blue bioelectricity comes and dissipates it. Now what I'm thinking is that this is a big tell for Miles being a significant part into how Peter ends up getting the symbiote off of him. An even bigger reason as to why I think they're making this change is if we look back earlier in the demo, when Peter gets blasted by the rockets from the gunship, it looks like the fire doesn't really affect the symbiote at all. And if you know anything about the symbiote from previous stories and canon, fire is typically one of the symbiote's greater weaknesses, along with sound, obviously. But here it seemed like it was borderline unaffected. So what if Insomniac is getting rid of the fire weakness and replacing it with a weakness to Miles's new bioelectricity? And as for Miles's new powers that they talked about in this demo, I think that's actually referencing how he absorbed all the energy from the Nuform reactor in his game. I think that is where he got these new bioelectricity powers from. But somewhere along the way, Miles is going to realize that his new powers are the key to stopping Peter from going on his violent rampage as Venom. Assuming he's Venom, but even if he's not Venom, I still believe that Miles's powers are going to be the key from stopping Peter from going too overboard with his symbiote suit. Because I absolutely believe that there is going to be a boss fight between Miles and Peter at the end of this game, if not the middle of this game. Somewhere in this game, there's going to be a boss battle between them. And I think we're going to play as Miles fighting Peter. But that's about everything that I have to go over. If there's something that I didn't talk about that you wish I did, please comment down below and let me know. I want to talk about this game as much as possible. I wanted this focus to be on more around my thoughts on everything and theories that I had rather than like a general breakdown, because I assume a lot of people are doing that. But if you guys made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I cannot wait for this game, and I assume most of you can't either. Have a great day.